Hey there, it's Professor Smith. I wanted to take you through to some of the materials in the next module on our U.S. legal system. Yeah. This should be the third module, and I start you out with a video, which again I'll post into the materials. But it's about how within the U.S. legal system, how important judicial independence and impartiality are to the proper functioning of that system. I think we can see that in current events, and it sort of makes sense. It assures litigants that judges will be impartial, that they don't or should not have a political agenda. These activities give insight into what judicial independence means to judges, and more importantly, what it means to litigants and society at large. So I encourage you to watch that video, which will be within your materials. When it comes to the U.S. legal system too, I also, don't want to hesitate to point out a lot of this information is online, right? You can find out about our court system, um, because the court system does such a good job at being transparent. In California, we call that the Judicial Council. That's the group that sort of manages the California court system, and they have a website. And I encourage you to spend a little bit of time there. In particular, I always, because we are going to come up here on some discussion of access to justice, take a tour around the self-help area of the California courts website. As we start talking about the U.S. legal system, I want to make sure that I've talked to you about a couple uh, basic legal principles that are foundational to the system. The first is stare decisis, and that's the requirement that the courts follow decisions of higher level courts within the same jurisdiction. It is because of stare decisis that the court is mostly predictable, right? And that prediction and that advocacy uh, of your case to a predictable outcome in a lot of ways is the practice of law, right? It relies on stare decisis because at the end of the day, business people, we function better when there is predictability. Because we want to keep our money, we want to keep our jobs, we want to keep our families close to us. All of those things are thrive in a predictable, more predictable culture. Another super important concept when it comes to law is jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is really the power of the court to hear on a matter, right? To take a matter up. Um, and without the proper jurisdiction, both over the people and the subject matter, the court does not have power. Um, and this is really important because we give the court so much power. When you think about it, um, there's not too many things in our adult lives where when somebody tells us something, we have to do it, right? When the court says, you need to be here, Kim Smith, on this day, at this time, in this courtroom, it takes me away from my life. That is power. Um, and, the court has limits to its power, and one of those limits is its jurisdiction. So, and again, and jurisdiction just isn't necessarily about the court's ability to call you into the courtroom. It's also the court's ability to call you on a particular subject or the things that that courtroom has the power to oversee. One time yeah, I mean, everything from family law to probate to civil matters to name changes, right? Different judicial officers in different courtrooms have the power to make those decisions. And we call that jurisdiction. Another interesting principle of our court system is that courts are supposed to restrict their holdings to the narrowest terms possible in resolving a dispute. When they go outside of that, sometimes they call it dicta, but it's it's outside of the actual case or controversy that's being decided, which is supposed to inform how we look at and apply the law, right? Anything outside of that is sort of speculation. Uh, and the courts are cautioned and not really allowed to do that uh, because it's too far outside of their scope. Um, and it doesn't give us the guidance that we need moving forward. Uh, so anyway, those are some really important concepts to keep in mind as you study the materials in this module. Have a good time doing that.